Welcome to All-Stringer Creations. Today we're going to disassemble a Kimber model 1911 45. Go through the proper procedure for cleaning it, oiling it, reassembling it, and getting it ready to go back to the range. Come join us. Today we're going to work on a 1911 model. This is a Series 80. It's a custom shop Kimber Ultra CDP2 Pro. It's basically the subcompact model of the 45. Alright. First thing we can do to tear this one down, Kimber in their infinite wisdom has decided that you need a special tool to break it down because there is no barrel bushing on this model. So we put the pin, there's a hole in the guide rod assembly that this pin fits into, and that will hold the spring to keep it somewhat compressed. Alright, and just like any once you get to this point, it's just like any 1911. You'll move the slide to the rear so that the slot opens up to pull the arm out, and then release the safety. This is a Series 80, so it has the hammer drop, the firing pin safety that locks out when you grip the beaver tail safety. So if you're gripping the back, you won't get it apart, you won't get it back together. So you have to loosen up on that and slide the frame away from the slide. Now this, I put the tool in too far, pull it back a little bit so we can slide that out. And then lay the lug down and slide the barrel forward. And there it is. That is field stripped. That's as far as you need to go to clean this firearm. You do not need to take anything else apart. There are springs inside the back plate here. Your trigger spring, your mainspring, or a hammer spring. And if you pull them out, bend them, you could change your trigger pull, you could change the operation of the firearm and cause you all sorts of trouble. So we will avoid that. Like with any gun, you need very little solvent. Just what's on that Q-tip will be plenty sufficient to clean this firearm. You don't need a whole lot of it. The more solvent you have, the more you have to clean up, because you cannot leave any in the weapon when you put it back together. The chemistry involved in it will break down the oil that you put on and cause you to have abnormal wear in your gun, because it will kill the lubrication properties of the oil that you use. And we don't use much oil when we put them back reassemble. So anywhere that you see any carbon buildup, any ash, any soot from firing the pistol, you want to brush a little solvent on. And pay particular attention to the breech face. to the feed ramp on the back of the barrel and around the barrel lugs. And in the chamber. I will cheat and put a little more down in the barrel. Okay, now that we've got what solvent we're going to use, that is all the solvent you'll use to clean this firearm. The guide rod recoil assembly looks good, and if doesn't need any excess cleaning. Matter of fact, I would not put any solvent or oil on this assembly. If you have any dirt, any grime on it, take a brush, a nylon brush, and brush it out of the spring assembly and leave that the way it is. Set it aside. Look around the muzzle. Usually if you notice, there will be ash right around the muzzle, right around the front sight, and that's just a product of the gases escaping the barrel muzzle and settling on the front of the pistol. Alright, take your brush if you have any areas of extra grime, and I sometimes find it around the hammer, and that's mainly when I'm cleaning someone else's pistol. That's usually because they've oiled it, and when they oil it, they put too much oil on. Oil is like a magnet. It will draw dirt, ash, soot, grime, grit, and cause it, instead of protecting from it, it will actually cause it to settle and cause excessive wear, because it'd be like dropping sandpaper in between the components. So there's a little extra bit there. Actually does not want to come loose. There we go. I don't use metal brushes. I don't use bronze or brass. I use nylon. Good old toothbrush. When you wear a toothbrush out and you swap a new toothbrush in, you can take your old one, clean it up, and use it for cleaning your guns. Okay. Clean the rails of the slide and the breech face. Right around the extractor, that will usually catch a lot of grime. So we'll clean that out real good. Okay, now that we have used solvent on everything except the inside of the barrel, take our brush through the breech. You don't ever want to run a brush in from the muzzle. And this is less of an issue with pistols and handguns than it is with rifles. And also, when you run your brush in, make sure that it completely extends before you change directions and pull it back. Don't ever pull in part of the way and then pull back in the opposite direction. You can cause damage. At the very least, you can break the bristles of your brush and cause it to wear out a whole lot quicker. Okay. Now once you've brushed it, I'll take a patch, lay it across the chamber, and push it through with the bore brush. And it doesn't look too bad. I think maybe one more will be sufficient. If you got old t-shirts, you can cut them into squares for patches, and it's perfect material. Old bed sheets, and I think one more. Yep, that's good. Now that barrel is clean. You notice I didn't use copper solvent and any of the other harsh chemicals. You don't need it. Okay, let's wipe the surfaces down where we put the solvent. A Q-tip for places that you can't get your rag into. The 1911 is a very, very simple machine, and it's one of those things that you either love them or you hate them. They have their following and they have their detractors. Personally, I love them. And then amongst the people who like them, you'll have some who swear by Series 70 and others who swear by Series 80. If you're building or you're talking about a competition rig, a competition pistol, we've got an ultra lightweight trigger pull, then yes, you're going to want a Series 70. But for a personal defense, home defense, something that you're going to carry, you're not going to want an ultralight trigger pull. You want something around 4 pounds or so, because that's just makes better sense. And if you're doing that, then you can get a perfectly acceptable trigger pull out of the Series 80 1911. Now the difference, you've heard me talking about Series 70, Series 80. The original 1911 was what they call the Series 70. Now in the 80s they came out with, due to litigation and suits and everything, that they came out with a firing pin safety, which physically locks out the firing pin so that it cannot drop unless the trigger is pulled. Now if you'll look on the bottom of the slide, you'll see this plunger here. Well, that's what that is. When that is pushed up, the firing pin can move. But as long as it's down, the firing pin is locked in place. There's no way that firing pin can move forward and strike a primer as long as that firing pin safety is in place and intact. Now, to operate that, you have a plunger that comes through the frame, and it's attached to the beaver tail safety. And if you'll look, as I depress the beaver tail safety, you'll see this plunger come up. Now the Series 80 has, as a result of that safety feature, there are several additional linkages that are added to the frame and to the slide, which do affect the trigger pull. And that's why I said that as long as you're building or wanting a pistol for competition that you have a very lightweight trigger pull, those extra linkages can cause enough interference to make a lightweight trigger feel gritty or not precise and it not be a good acceptable trigger. But with a heavier trigger, you're not going to notice the very little bit of extra drag that they produce. So for a home defense pistol, a Series 80 is perfectly fine. Alright, now that we've got it cleaned, it's time to start putting it back together. You want to inspect everything, make sure there's nothing that looks way out of shape, and look at the feed ramp, make sure there's no gouges, make sure that there's nothing, no excessive wear. Your wishbone linkage here, your barrel linkage, make sure it's free. And we've already checked the firing pin safety, make sure it operates freely with no friction, no grittiness. And with the rest of the safeties, we still feel the same thing. There's no grittiness, everything is operating. Alright, so to put this back together, I want to put a drop of oil on the barrel lugs, and I'll put one on the linkage. Then I'll wipe it down. This is my oil rag. I've had this same rag for years, and it's got a little bit of oil soaked into it throughout, and you could just almost oil a gun down just by rubbing it down with this rag. But I'll wipe the excess off, lay the linkage down on the barrel, and slide it into place. Okay, and then we'll pull it back up. Now we check the recoil spring guide rod assembly. Look to see that the spring's intact. There's no broken coils, no wear on the bushing there. Everything looks to be in good condition. So we'll slide it through and back into position. Slide it up under the chin of the slide. Okay. Now take a drop of oil, to the guide rails on the slide on both sides, a single drop. Now I'll let gravity pull that down the rails. And I'll take my rag and wipe up any excess. That is all you need. That's it. That's all. And when you slide it on, make sure the spring's in place. Make sure you're not pushing down on the beaver tail safety. Slide it back until the little half moon detent on the side of the slide is over the square hole. And insert the slide release. Okay, did I miss? I believe I missed the barrel linkage. There we go. It's dropped. I did it again. Okay. There we go. And then we'll lock the slide back. Remove the tool. Slide back and let it fall forward. There we go. Cycle it several times to make sure it has proper operation. And there it is. There's your 1911 model pistol cleaned. Thank you for watching.